who ensured his control.
For Shostakovich, Stalin's terror was beginning to hit close to home. It's been estimated that 1 in 10 Russians was brought in for questioning during the terror. They were often chosen at random. Many were Shostakovich's friends, family, and fellow artists. Akhmatova's poetry was banned, her husband executed. Meyerhold was arrested, imprisoned, tortured, and shot. Malevich's paintings were confiscated. He died in poverty. Shostakovich's sister was exiled.
Shostakovich was a witness of incredible suffering, the fear. There was nobody safe. He knows what it is, not from the stories that others told him, but from his own experience.
In 1937, Shostakovich himself was summoned to the Smolny Palace, the headquarters of the Internal Security Agency. Ironically, he got off because his interrogator was arrested before he could begin questioning Shostakovich. For the rest of his life, Shostakovich had to live under the shadow of these terrible times. The winds of oppression blew first one way and then the other. He had to stay on his toes and react to these shifting political climates. He had to write hack pieces from time to time or issue bitter condemnations of other composers. And often he wrote a piece that really mattered to him only to have to put it away in a drawer, hiding it for years until he felt that it was safe to reveal it. As a teenager, I had the opportunity to meet Shostakovich. He was part of a delegation of Soviet composers who visited the USC campus where I was then a student. I played one of his little fantastic dances and the E-flat minor prelude. He listened politely and very quietly, sternly said, "Thank you." That whole afternoon, he sat off by himself, with a shadow that seemed to fall only on him in the midst of the California sunshine. He smoked, saying nothing. It was clear he was an outsider. And it was only years later when I knew more of his music and more of his life story that I could appreciate how he had become the person that he seemed to be that afternoon.
Shostakovich was not a person who was happy, surrounded by many, many friends, because he suffered himself enormously as a person, as a human being, as a citizen of his country, of course. This loneliness, just being in the middle of incredible suffering and couldn't do anything but to write music about it.
When the Fifth Symphony premiered in 1937, Shostakovich's fate hung in the balance. He knew that this would be his last chance for survival. He had to come up with something upbeat and popular to end the symphony, and his last movement accomplished this. Is it fair to say that if the last movement of the symphony were not as it is, he would have been in just as much trouble for the Fifth Symphony as he was for the ones that came before it?
Yeah, they would relate to the second movement. They would understand what they're opening, but the third movement would have killed him if he would go the same direction.
He had to learn to manipulate the system, and he realized that he had to deliver a last movement which would do what it did for you as a kid,
exactly.
And a lot of other people.
Exactly,
okay, all the sadness has all gone away, and now it's only triumph is ahead.
I don't know if it's a happy ending. It seems forced.
It looks like somebody beat you with a stick and tell you, re-enjoy this.
It's like a tragedy and happiness put together.
fourth movement begins with those old fateful ta-ta notes. Now those two notes are the starting points for a string of march-like themes filled with swaggering attitude. The pace of the piece grows and grows. It jumps forward like scenes in a newsreel. And the orchestra swirls with musical currents that burst in triumph and then, well, just listen. All hope has been dashed. We've come again to another dead end. There follows a long, slow, film-like pan of the exhausted terrain the movement has covered so far. The music suggests quiet remembrance sung for those who are gone. Now, following the expectations of a traditional symphony, we might be expecting now for the brisk march to reappear, sweeping us on to victory. But instead, a dead slow march begins. This is striking because the march never gets faster. Audiences would have recognized the reference to a scene from Boris Godunov where the crowds are forced to praise the Tsar. There's a sense of heavy lifting here, like scenes of crowds erecting or perhaps toppling some heroic monument. Finally, with a great deal of extra shoving and hauling, we make it to D major. But the process is painful and difficult. Now, we're all ready for our happy ending. It's all fine until we go a few bars further, to the moment where the piece's final cadence should be securing that happy ending goal. To do that, we'd expect to hear something like what we hear at the end of Mahler's Third Symphony. Had Shostakovich wanted to do that, it might have sounded something like this.